Welcome to Midlife Unraveled, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the twists and turns of midlife. I'm your host, Anita Gilbert, and I've transitioned from the corporate world of investment banking to become the proud owner of a yoga and Pilates studio. Together, we're going to navigate the exhilarating roller coaster that is midlife. Each episode, we dive deep with a seasoned expert to rediscover and redefine how to live our best during this life-changing period. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes, brimming with wisdom, insights, inspiration, and a laugh along the way. So strap in, because Midlife Unraveled is about to redefine the way you embrace midlife. Subscribe today and take this journey with us. Delighted to welcome back to Midlife Unraveled our guest today, Dee Tozer. Now, she is the founder of Couples Master Coaching. She's a marriage repair master coach. I love the positive spin on that. Her experience is distinguished by her one-of-a-kind blend of optimal marriage transformation strategies developed for over 30 years. She's a master at repairing marriages after infidelity, cheating, or betrayal of one form or another. Dee has helped more than 5,800 couples with a 94% reporting a positive outcome. That's absolutely incredible. And 2,300 of those were repaired after an affair, which just goes to prove what a huge impact Dee has in putting back together the fractured connection of two people. Now, our focus today will be on men. So we are very much flipping it over. Last week, we spoke to Dee about women in midlife and relationships, very much focused on the female perspective. So today, we are flipping that over to the men in our lives, and we are going to delve a little deeper and get a really good understanding of what is going on for them. So I'm excited, and I think you're going to love this episode. Enjoy. Who's that?
Yes.
Dee Tozer, I'm so excited to welcome you back to Midlife Unraveled. We had you on last week talking all about women, relationships in midlife, and this time we are flipping it over to men.
Which is a very good balance, Anita, and I'm glad to be back too. Very thrilled, thank you.
It's exciting because we need that balance. I feel like it's really important. We see everything from our own perspective, and it's really, really helpful to actually see what's happening on the other side to help ensure that we, that we continue to nourish those relationships around us.
Yes, so, exactly.
Let's kick off. So what issues are men facing in midlife?
I think the most important one is that they want to find themselves, they lose themselves, as women will often say they do too, but I'm just talking about the men, in the family and their work and all the commitments and the constant cycle of life. And then they decide they don't want boredom or monotony anymore or repetitive stuff. So they head off to do something that gives them some uplift and some sense of purpose. Even if they've still got jobs in midlife and they might have great careers, it doesn't necessarily satisfy them anymore though.
Right. I feel like women are often going through the same thing too. So you just sort of pop your head up and have a look around. But with men, you do hear that sort of common thing of, they're going out and buying that red sports car and suddenly playing golf at weekends all weekend and that sort of thing. Is that really happening?
Yes, in my experience with all the couples I work with, yes, definitely may not be a red sports car, but it'll be something that's uplifting for them in a car, a vehicle or a bike, some sort of motorbike, or some of them an electric, not an electric, sorry, that was a crazy thing to say, a really whiz-bang sports bike.
Oh, okay.
So
the cycling is huge amongst sort of 50-something.
Yeah, in the cycling, and I've seen them go and spend like $25,000 on a cycle.
Whoa, okay, that's a lot.
That's a lot, and they haven't really cycled a lot, but they they try to get some position, posturing maybe of themselves, doing things for themselves, and as women do too. We're all doing things for ourselves, but men do it in ways like that, and like with a very smart, classy, flashy car, with maybe two of them even. They might start collecting them. They take up interests that they haven't been able to, is probably the best answer to that. And also golfing, as you said. So the golfing is more usually about company and camaraderie, comradeship with the
Yeah.
teams, and company to sit down and have a bite with or a beer with or something. And it's about purpose. It's because they like to improve their score, their, whatever they're playing off, a handicap.
Yeah.
It's competitive enough. It's all of that. Sometimes the cars are too. They might buy something that's more competitive and they go out
Right.
on car rallies and things like that. Or if they're in cycling, it's more competitive. It's like um, re-establishing purpose and identity. They
Hmm.
feel like a lot of them, they've lost identity at that stage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can
Yeah.
understand that. Should we see those as red flags? The suddenly,
I think it's good to notice it. I think it's not a red flag necessarily. I mean, if someone just starts disappearing
yeah.
days and days, doesn't interact, won't talk when they're home, hardly, or if they come home, they don't eat at home, things like that are red flags. But this,
Hmm.
if they're actively taking up something to make them feel better, needs to be noticed, but it could be something to really work with to reconnect if we've drifted a long way apart over the years.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
important to try and have these interests as a couple together, or is it just as important to try and support, your husband, your partner, to have their own interests?
Yes, the second part. While many times in my years of couples work, uh, the wives want to do it or think they should be doing it all together, and that causes so much friction. They still definitely need their own interests and some together. So it's
Right.
a balance, and it's how to learn how to have a conversation so you can get to a balance, because we might say a balance, it's good to have it, but they haven't got a way to navigate any conversations around that and usually dig in.
So how do we start those conversations?
Good question. I mean, by the time couples have been married a long time and midlife turns up, navigating questions or having questions and discussions has usually stopped. It's
Yeah.
usually one way's opinion. This, or this. Rather, you said that, you need that, I want this. It's not, what do you think about this?
Mm.
Or how about? So if we want to have a conversation like he wants to get his red sports car, let's say, and they can afford it, he's retired, and it would be, maybe he hasn't retired, he just wants to do it for fun. And it would be about how he says it, which men are not so good at opening conversations like that at all. They just say, well, that's what I'm getting. Or they go and do it and come home with it. Where if a woman could say, okay, what are we going to do now with our time? What are you looking at? What do you like to do? I know you like this. If we introduce a conversational style with them where
Mm.
they can say something without being pounced on, that's how you start navigating it. Then you
Mm.
get comfortable with him being able to say, well, I know it's crazy, but I'm thinking of going and getting this blah blah car or that cycle, or or I think I'll take up golf lessons. I might have been
Yeah.
pottering around with golf for a while, or I might take up whatever.
Yeah.
And I had one guy take up boxing at 50.
Oh, wow. That's a new one.
Not for competitive boxing, just for
Yeah.
fitness. It started with fitness, but then he ended up getting into relatively heavy duty
Wow.
competition. And he
Wow.
loved it. But she
Wow.
didn't, because he was just worried he'd get hurt all the time, of course. And
Yeah.
eventually he
Yeah.
did. And he got hurt enough that he stopped, but it wasn't too damaging.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about men's willpower to give themselves a sense of purpose and meaning and identity, which
Hmm.
is what we're talking about all those things. It's that identity thing, leave their career, some haven't, but they're ready to really make their mark in a different way. Women holding them back or being negative resistant about it is detrimental to any and every relationship.
Right. I think there's also an element of assuming, like when you're having those conversations, assuming you know what the other person's thinking.
Oh yes, when you know them a long time, yes.
Yeah. And so not actually asking the question and how do you feel about this or whatever.
No, no,
That
they're not.
I imagine that comes into it a lot as well.
It's all right. It's all statements. Like, this is happening, a statement. I'm doing. not I'm thinking of it, or not
Yeah.
sit down and have a little chat, because by then usually little chats in lots of couples have stopped. They've been
Yeah.
drowned
Yeah.
out by all the activities with kids, by surviving, really.
Yeah. And do
Yeah.
you think there's also the element of, I'm just sort of thinking when you said it tends to be a definitive, I'm getting the car, or I've already got the car, or I'm using the car as an example. But do you
But
feel like
yes,
there's that definitive act almost, so not allowing them to be talked out of it? It's like, this
yes,
is what I really want
definitely.
to do. Like, I don't want to be talked out of it, so I don't want to, it doesn't need to be discussed because it's not something that, like,
It's not
I
negotiable.
almost, yeah, I almost don't want your opinion because I don't want to be talked out of it. This is what I want
No,
to do.
I'm making up my own opinions now, and it's like a trek to Kosciuszko, for instance. Not Kosciuszko. Oh yeah, Kosciuszko if we say Australia, but I'm
Yeah.
talking Everest. Actually, I was talking base camp in Everest. So I had a couple where the guy was determined he was going to do that when he turned 60. So she started telling him to do it when he's 50. Telling him though, like
Okay.
preaching, directing, it never works. So by the time I'm talking to them, he's still hanging on to this dream. He's 60, he's not terribly well, but he's trying to get fit. And it's a constant battle of wills, her to
Right.
stop him going and him determined to go. And in the long run, they were an overseas couple. We found a much better option for him to go and climb that was compromise, yes, or cooperation. And he went down to Machu Picchu, whatever, in Brazil
Okay.
or
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
South America, where they had guides help that was all much better and none of the snow and none of all the awful stuff. And the other way, they had to go 3 times before he could properly climb or do anything of significance. Where down there, they only went once and she could go and have a great holiday. And she ended up climbing half of it with him.
Wow.
But that
See,
was
that,
introducing a
yeah.
conversational style to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else can we do to support our men, our midlife men?
Our midlife men. Well, what we can do is hard to say what we can do because we're all about what we ought not to do. But what we can do is encourage and uplift them, even if they're saying something that you think sounds crazy or ridiculous. Encourage.
Okay.
And same for them to the women too. If we could go, wow, that's a great idea. Even if we've got concerns, you can bring them up once you've got a comfort zone of understanding between you to pull it at, unravel it and go, well, do you think that's dangerous at all, really? I don't want to be over the top, paranoid about this, but it worries me a bit. And if someone's taking a lot of, medication for high blood pressure or anything like that, you'd weave it in. But what typically happens that I hear, and I hate starting a sentence with but, so I apologise to listeners for having to listen to that, it's that they'll say, oh, you can't do that, you've got high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah? Or what about, now it stops them dead, the resistance is there, and they'll go, pull back, go quiet.
Yeah.
Relationship starts, if it was coming closer or if it's already been distance a long time, just gets further apart.
Right. And then it's
Because
not a topic for discussion anymore. Then
it's off
he's
topic.
not going to raise it again because it's just going
No.
to be
And
shut
he's
down.
going to feel like both sides feel misunderstood, not heard, and the disconnect gets wider. The gap gets wider. And then if he's not allowed to do something, he'll find something else to do. But then he won't say what it is.
Or maybe do
So,
it in secret.
yeah, or do it in secret. So to encourage them is the word, is always to listen attentively, pay attention. Yeah. So guys don't sit down and waffle on a lot. So if they're
No.
talking about something like that, I think we could generalize with that. A lot of things I don't like to generalize, but that one I
Yeah.
do. They'll more flick telly on and look whatever, but they won't actually articulate even what they're looking at. And they might be looking at some fabulous trip they want to go on, but they're afraid even to bring it up to go together. Or they might want to go on a boys' trip snow skiing in Japan or something.
Yeah.
Even like at age 50 and 60. A lot of guys
Yeah.
do that, but they won't bring it up. They don't know how to. So for the women helping support that would be to say, what an exciting thing, uplifting, What exciting thing are you thinking about? You've got anything on your agenda? I think it'd be great if you did something that really gave you a buzz.
Yeah. And maybe that
And
can be something that's talked about at the beginning of the year, even like, planning,
yeah,
talking about sort of planning things for the year. It's just like, what,
yeah,
what would you love to do? Like, what wild and crazy thing would you like to do?
yeah,
And that's opened up to both parties. So
mm,
it feels open. The discussion is there. Is
yeah,
it something that we do together? Is it something that we do separately?
yeah.
Or, just to have those open discussions, I feel to raise it rather than it being
Mm,
something, I don't know. I feel like a lot of women are, and the nature of the relationship is that, it's her job to say yes or no.
yeah.
Whereas if the situation was reversed and she wanted to go for a weekend with her girlfriends, I think in a lot of cases she would just go. She
Yes,
would just say, "I'm
yes.
going," not asking permission. Whereas I think a lot of men may be feeling that they need to sort of, almost have the approval of their wives before they can do these things.
Well, so I call that goodwill. Okay, I say if we speak to each other with goodwill and positivity, then,
Mm.
and we have to learn it, we're not used to it, it's not that difficult to turn it around, but it's about saying um, what would give you a buzz, what would light you up.
Yeah,
Showing
yeah,
interest with that question, I couldn't even begin. I've worked with nearly 6,000 couples now, and I would say the majority have never had their wife say that to them. Mind you, the
really.
majority of women haven't either, but women tend to
Yeah,
go and do more things that will light them up.
yeah, yeah. Or they'll talk
And
about it a lot more. I feel like that they will talk about
yeah,
it more
and they talk
with
with their
friends or with
girlfriends.
partners, and
They're
yeah,
more, yes, whereas the fellas don't as much. And if they do, they hit resistance. They don't need much of it till they, blank out. No, I won't talk about them. They need
yeah, yeah.
encouragement and cooperation. They need all the good words in their goodwill that says, have a great time.
Yeah. But what if it is a wild and crazy idea? What if he's wanting to spend the the only savings in the bank and go off on a world trip with his mates or something like that?
Yeah.
Like how to handle those kind of situations
Well,
where
they
it
won't
really
do
is
that.
probably not, not the most
Well,
sensible option.
there's no easy answer to that one. That's going to bring
Yeah.
a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
If it were going to clean out the savings in the bank, was no woman or man, whichever one's going to do it's going to sit quietly on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd have to be saying things like, so how is that going to leave us? Where would we be? But they're not going to like it. It's going to come across as control and preaching anyway.
Yeah.
There's no good answer to that one. If it
Yeah.
was that, if it's as extreme as that, but if it was something crazy like going ziplining somewhere but could harm themselves, or bungee jumping, because they're all things that guys who are still wanting to feel young and youthful when they've matured a bit past it,
Yeah.
they all want to go do those things.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different conversation of concern to have then. So you're coming in with positivity and concern. And if they're saying, like, I've had a guy break both legs on a
Oh
bungee
wow.
jump.
Ouch.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Can you imagine?
I just couldn't.
Um,
I those things have always scared me. I'm happy to do other things, but bungee jumping, no.
no,
I
and he
could
was
not
about 50,
imagine.
57 or something, and the bungee jumping company had an age limit of 60. So at 60, you had to show you, and you couldn't do it. But at
Yeah.
56 or 7 or whatever, you could. But he was supposed to have had um, given them some reassurance or something of any breaks. Well, he'd had both knees replaced.
Oh gosh.
So it was foolish, really foolish. And he was on a boys' trip, so she couldn't do anything about it. And none of them did. But the boys that he went with are only in their late 30s.
Oh, okay.
So you would
So
think
he didn't.
he was trying to keep up with them. So that ended up with me as a couples thing because there were many other things that came into it that I got involved with. And a reasonable guy, he's a very nice, reasonable guy, was a lawyer, very bright, but didn't even, I think, thought he's invincible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that put him out of action for 18 months, I think.
Oh wow.
It
Oh
wasn't
no.
lightweight. So it is challenging. There's no one answer for this, but it's
Mm.
more if women start earlier
Yeah.
If the women are listening to this, keep your communication open as best you can with uplift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show interest, because if you shut them down, you said it before, they'll go and do it without telling you, or they'll be more determined to conquer.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So these are
Mm.
really good techniques to improve the communication. So just to
Yes.
show interest, to be receptive. And I feel like
Yeah.
to consciously not, you may feel like the first thing you want to date, you want to say is shut it down, but to resist the
Yeah.
temptation of doing that.
Do you know how often, I can't tell you an exact percentage, but it is relevant for women to hear how often they will say no when their husband brings up something he wants to do that's a bit adventurous,
Yeah.
ambitious. There is a number, but I don't know how valid it is or where they get it. They do surveys, different students do surveys in all shopping malls and malls and all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff on
Yeah.
iPads. So it's anonymous. There is some figure that's around 80, high 80%
Oh, wow.
that women say no to their men. Just no.
Okay. Just no. There's
Yeah,
no
no.
explanation. It's just no.
Just no.
Wow.
What did you just say that? No. So they feel like a bit of an idiot. They feel like a bit of a stupid boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while I hear it all and I can understand a woman's worried about him, but it's not too hard to preface that with saying, "Ooh, that's a bit scary when I think about that."
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're going to go, whatever it is, whitewater rafting. There's
Yeah.
another one. That's a bit of a worry. Should I be worried about it? And then somebody that's a little bit more reasonable might go, oh, maybe, but I don't think so. What makes you worried about it? So you get a conversation that you can
Yeah.
get to a point where, oh, we're both worried about it. Oh, maybe that's not such a good idea. Or like when we navigated for that other couple to go Machu Picchu, or whatever you pronounce
Yeah.
it, it was not, it was extremely difficult because his wife, because everything he wanted to do was over the top adventurous and risky,
Yeah.
she was saying no to everything. And she wasn't just saying no, she was going, no, I don't think so. That's ridiculous.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now,
That's very confidence depleting, isn't it? When you have that response.
yeah, and you know how common it is again. Women saying to
Yeah.
their husbands, that's ridiculous. But yes, but men do also say that to their wives. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculous. So what the heck would we ever get positive in a relationship out of one or other partner saying it's ridiculous?
Yeah. You can't. There's nothing else you can say to that, is there? Like that's the statement that shut it down.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I wanted to raise something with you also. You mentioned in a previous chat we had about the high number of affairs that are happening with couples in their sort of 50s and 60s.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Well, there's lots written now. More focus is being put on the fact that the guys there's several parts, but one part is they find monogamy monotonous. So we're talking about monotonous monogamy
Okay.
or monogamy monotony, either way. So looking, and usually over years together, couples get very familiar with each other. Intimacy and warmth does die off. Keeping it alive is not easy. And so they're also starved for affection.
Okay.
Okay. So we have emotional starvation or affection starvation as well. And then they are easily vulnerable to someone else showing them attention if they've got both pieces or more pieces than that could be there. But when they're feeling not like they're not desired anymore, and women feel it too. We all need to feel desired, but the men notice it first that they're not desired, and it's usually women have turned off sooner, and that can be
Yeah.
by. And a lot of listeners might be going, "Yeah, but that's because he does. That's what's turned me
Yeah.
off." Rah, rah, rah. Oh, yeah, we know all that.
Yeah.
So again, if we want to, if you like, best you can prevent any straying, betrayal, it's about keeping enough communication, warmth, affection going to be able to talk it through and stay nicely, warmly connected, but it's not common.
Yeah.
Other studies
Yeah.
show it's like in about 3% of couples they have the warmth still there
Wow.
in their latter years. 3%, that's very low, isn't it?
It is very, very low. So
Mm.
what can we do? Like, what can we do to create that warmth?
The first thing we do, and it's also a not to do, is stop criticizing.
Okay.
So
I think we're all guilty of
approve,
that, aren't we?
yeah, approve. So I more talk about, I think I said last time, disapproval and approval. So disapproval is a form of criticism, usually comes across how they do anything, either side. If we approve, that means we are not going to criticize. So the do part is to show approval. And it could even be to show approval for them noticing something about you that they never normally do. They might say, oh, you had your hair cut, or you like
Yeah.
that colour, or you've got new specs on or something. Because after a long marriage, men rarely notice any change in their wife
Oh, really?
and rarely ever
Okay.
comment. Yeah. And it's usually because if they do, the woman says, oh, you've never noticed it before.
Okay.
So it comes with another slap, a
Yeah.
disapproval. So disapproval has to be turned into approval. So if anyone here has a tendency to disapprove, it's so common, we don't even
Yeah.
notice it's happening. If they go to disapprove, then the turnaround comes from stopping and thinking seriously, what can I start approving? And you only have to do 1 or 2 approval statements a day
Yeah.
or even a week, and you're going to be shifting the vibe and the energy into a nicer space.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like a lot, like even to sort of compliment them on their appearance or to, that tie looks really nice or,
Yeah.
thanks for doing whatever it was. Dropping
Yeah.
the kids at the station or, whatever it
Yep.
happens to be. But I
Yeah.
feel like there can be very, very small things that
Mm.
are genuinely worthy of a simple thank you.
And even if it's not, even if you don't want to go, a lot of people are resisting going thank you these days in relationships. It's sort of like a bit of an era. They don't want to. They think, why should I have to say thank you? I mean, a lot of grief comes from it. So even if they don't want to, if there's listeners on here that
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm not saying thank you for that, he should. That's
Oh
part
yeah,
of.
I was just
Right.
going to say that. I feel like there's you
Well,
don't want to say thank you for putting the dishes away because maybe it's his job to put the dishes away. So why would I
or,
thank him for doing
or
something he
it's
should do?
or if you say thank you, it's like it's your job and he's doing it instead of you. So
Yeah,
either way, it doesn't work well. But if we go, oh, that was nice. That was nice.
yeah,
That's all. That was nice. Oh, it was really, whatever you picked the whatever up or took them to their camp or whatever. Oh, that was really great. Did you have a nice chat in the car with the
yeah,
kids or the kid or whatever? Or taking a grandchild down to the play park or, it's not a thank you thing. It's just an acknowledgement of emotional connection that values them because emotional starvation comes from feeling not valued. And in
right.
a
Okay.
long-term marriage, the most overriding factor that causes the splits and causes the real unhappiness is that they feel not valued, not undervalued. Yes, that too, but not valued.
Right. Okay.
Mm. So,
That's a very interesting one.
isn't it? Yeah, because you don't think of that in your everyday life. You think, well, I don't feel valued either. So, if it's one way, it's pretty easily fixed. But if it's both ways, it needs usually someone, a therapist or someone, to get in the middle of it and show them how to do it. There's
Yeah,
plenty of
yeah,
books on it, but usually men won't read them. And I don't be disrespectful for guys if they're listening to this, but reading self-help books about relationships is not something that men are
probably not.
common do. No,
No, I
no,
doubt it. I
they
doubt
won't.
it.
And women are listening to every podcast on it known to man, every relationship podcast. They're on every Instagram page. And men are not looking at them at all. And
Yeah,
therefore, they don't see what the women are. They're not on the same page. And that's really
yeah,
hard to bring either one, to bring one up to speed, or for one to drop down to, if you like, down, or drop to that knowledge that the other person doesn't have a clue about it. And
yeah.
it doesn't
And
matter. you know.
And I feel like if one party's, like if women are listening to it, like let's say listening to things and reading books and talking with their girlfriends about it, it's all very much focused on them and what the partners are not doing for them or
Yes.
what the partner's doing wrong. So it's coming from
Yes.
that position of,
Mm.
I suppose, of judgment and of, it's a very female focus. It hasn't turned it around. So that's why I was so excited to speak to you. Is like to turn it around and to
Yeah.
look at it from the male perspective. Is this, what are they needing that's not, that we could be improving on, that we could be
Yeah.
doing better, that we could be, playing our part to
Mm.
actually ensure that the relationship stays healthy and stays positive,
Mm.
and supportive of both people.
Yeah. Supportive is the key in there to be, and it disappears over all the years of kids and salaries and jobs and everything that life takes you through. The support of each other fades off and other things take over. So then when kids have moved on or whatever, it's not such an easy task to really drop ego in a way, drop ego
Yeah.
both sides and go, right, I still love you. I still, we have a deep affection. We've got years of quality of life ahead of us. How will we look at it and have the conversation by encouraging the other one to have it, not by making it sound like they've been caused the problem that's happened, because that's what happens usually. When women try to
Yeah.
get a conversation with the man, the man feels blamed for the fact they're in the state they're in.
And maybe it's a matter of taking that brave step and for women to say, what can I do for you? Like, what can
Yes.
I do that's going to help you feel happier every day, feel more supported? And that question, obviously, you want that to be from both sides, but as a starting point to open the conversation, to show that vulnerability and to sort of say, what can I do? Not,
Yeah.
I've done everything for you and I've,
Yes.
all the list of things that they've done. That's fantastic. But to actually
Yes.
look at it on a deeper level and to open that conversation with that level of vulnerability.
Yes. So what comes first is the willingness to.
Yeah.
So I come back to that. Whoops. Because the willingness to have that conversation means dropping ego,
Yeah.
dropping disapproval so it doesn't come into it. Both of those are quite challenging. To
Yeah.
recognize the other one as a whole person that's valuable, valued, loved, cared about, and that they sense and get the vibe. So they come in and will come in onto that conversation. Otherwise, they won't. Then the challenge turns up. How do we then? Who's going to start the next conversation? Because if one gets shut down, and let's say the female wife started it, well, she probably doesn't want to start the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it becomes a bit of a standoff, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. And
It's,
they get
it's so
it
complicated, isn't it?
becomes stalled,
Mm.
and they both get caught up in resentment cycles. And they
Yeah.
already have been for a long time usually, but this just starts a new one.
So
And
is
then
it,
they can't, no,
it's hard to
sorry.
move on from that.
Yeah, it's hard.
So, in terms of, I was thinking before we were talking about a lot of men taking up new sports or activities or what have you.
Mm.
Is it, we understand it is healthy for people to each individual to do their own thing, to have their own, friends that they see. And I feel like women are very good at this, catching up with their girlfriends and that kind of thing, whereas men do it, but maybe not as much. And for them to have their own sports, how important is it to have your own thing, but also to do things together as well? Like, is one more important than the other, or is it a case of we should try and split it 50-50, or is it very
I
dependent on
think,
each person?
well, it, it it's really difficult to do 50-50 or any number, but it would be to mutually accept the other person. If it's mutually accepted that he or she needs to do whatever and wants to, usually then it's also mutually acceptable and agreeable to do times together as often
Yeah,
as either one wants. As
yeah,
often as either one wants. So it's not really a number. It's more like a goodwill thing. If you're in, let's say he's going off to golf all day Saturday, and maybe she's doing I don't know, yoga in the morning and grandkids in the afternoon. I don't know, whatever, something like that, shopping.
Yeah.
That then that's fine. They've all done their own, but what are they doing at Saturday night?
Yeah.
And then what are they doing Sunday lunch? There's plenty of times in the weekend. And all right, so we have, let's say it's a golf tournament or whatever turns up, and it's a weekend. And that might be that, and on home ground, I might have to go away to play.
Yeah.
So then she gets her own time away and values that time herself, and he does. And then
Yeah.
they say, well, next weekend we'll do something together. What will we do? So it's more like time to time, not a rule. It's more like just go with, oh, well, that was good. Now we do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important also to maybe have things that you do together as a ritual, like whether that's, every, you know, first Tuesday we always go out for dinner together, or
Yes.
I have a friend of mine and her and her husband, Sundays they always go for a hike, weather permitting, but they always go for a walk, hike somewhere, and that's their thing. So that's
Yes.
to establish those times where you can actually come together and do something
Absolutely.
together.
Yes. And, back a couple I had years ago, but I use the example a lot and I've helped a lot of couples work out how to do it. I had a couple who were living on a beautiful, about an hectare, and they had a creek at the bottom, and they had a swimming pool down there for the kids. They had 5 kids, and the kids were growing up. The youngest was, by the time we were working this through, the youngest was about 9, I think. And
Yeah.
then they went, I don't know, or they were 12, 13, 14. Anyway, the oldest was about 16 at the time. So big distance growing between them, and he worked away a lot. She was trying to hold a home business together for herself and do all the runaround for all the kids when he wasn't there, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
stupid. So we worked it out that he'd said a few times but got knocked back. Why don't we do a date night where we're at home? They didn't have anybody to look after the littler kid, and the older
Right.
kids didn't want to do it. But they love to do fish and chips on a Friday night. It's
Nice.
ordinary.
Yeah.
So what ended up, without boring the whole everybody, happening was, firstly was they got fish and chips in. She agreed, but it took a while to get the fish
Yeah.
and chips in and have 2 lots. So 5 kids lot inside, parents lot for them, and they started to embellish that, and they got prawns and seafood and whatever,
Nice.
made it much flasher for their lot down by the creek. And then as the kids got older, they were allowed to add other things to it. Then the young 9, 10-year-old and the 13-year-old girl decided they wanted to prepare some food for those nights. So they started doing a really nice, they loved to get this recipe thing and talk about it on Tuesday nights and get it
Oh,
ready for Friday nights. It became a family ritual. So
that's
mum and
so
dad would
nice.
go down there. Well, they used to just buy beers because he's a beer drinker and she wasn't really, she'd have a little bit of something. And then one night, she was out organising some stuff, and she thought, I might just take a bottle of champagne home. He organised all the rest of it. So she did, and he was rapt. It was
That's so
like woke up
nice.
this whole new thing. So they shared the bottle of
Yeah.
champagne. Next time, he brings two bottles of champagne home, no beer. All right? And
Oh,
next
that's so
time,
nice.
he brings a whole lobster home and oysters.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
went up in level and they connected closely. So that was their
Yeah.
Friday night ritual. And the ritual was the kids were not allowed to come out the back door. They were down
Yeah.
a hill. Down there. They were not allowed to. They could have any noise they wanted up there, whatever. And they had music down where they were. But the kids were not allowed to talk to them or come near them while they were out there.
Nice.
And then the
That is
kids
such,
took that as a treasure and turned that into something good for themselves. So it all worked out in the end. It took a while to get it there, though.
yeah. That is so nice. Actually, within the boundaries that you've got, okay, fine, we can't go out, we can't leave the kids at home, etc. But
Mm.
within that space, to
Yes.
take a chunk of time, to take an opportunity to actually
Yeah.
create that space. And they would have, I have no doubt they would have looked forward to that. And,
Yeah.
what else can we do? Like bring the lobsters. I love that idea. But actually creating something really, really special.
And I'll add the last little bit that they did. So, because I knew them for quite a long time after they stopped with me, they had when it was freezing cold, when it was cold winter, they obviously didn't want to go sit down there. So he did the classic, or they both organised this outdoor cover over thing in timber, and they
Yeah.
had one of those beautiful wood burner fire things put in, fire pit put in, and all these seats with cushions around it they sat on, so they were down like they were on a holiday somewhere.
Oh, how
And were keeping
lovely.
warm. It was absolute luxury, and it really did reconnect, repair, because they did it
Yeah.
all cooperatively. The kids loved it. It became the thing. Then a couple of the older boys started getting their girlfriend thing. The girlfriends would come over. They weren't allowed to come outside either. And
Yeah.
they thought it was hilarious and told their parents about this Friday night ritual. Yeah.
Isn't that lovely? That is such a nice, happy story. I love it. What a beautiful place for us to finish. But before we go,
Good.
I would love to ask for 3 takeaways from you that we
Well,
can implement at home.
yes. Well, the first takeaway is probably similar to the one for the girls, is recharge the relationship by uplifting approval.
Yeah.
Okay? Uplifting approval first.
So let's say
And
one positive compliment a day.
yeah, just one a day, even if it's not too forced a compliment, because they don't like it. They feel fake. It's fake. It has to be more
Yeah.
an uplift of, you were talking about such and such. That's a great idea. I really like
Yeah.
that. What do you think you'll do
Yeah.
about that? So taking a conversational style around it.
Yeah.
The second thing is encouraging affection. So encouraging the gentle touch, because men do it until they get stopped enough that they stop it, and then they don't come back to it naturally themselves. They don't know how to.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it needs a woman to do that. And then for the guy to be receptive to it too, if
Yeah.
there's men listening. There.
Yeah.
So that's the two. Probably the third one would be expect and accept changes are going to happen, and see how you can align together to enable them to happen. Like, I
Right.
want to go play golf and I never did, get on my cycle, do whatever I did. Any of those things that I want to do, we'll do. Yeah. Is that enough, those 3?
That's great. That's some nice
Good.
takeaways. Thank you.
Good. Sorry, I'm disappearing off your screen there. My
Uh,
battery. I forgot.
oh, good.
Yeah, we're
And
good now.
Dee, can you please share with people where they can find you?
Yes, my website is my name, as is on the bottom here, DEETOZER, just .com. I'm on Facebook, Couples Master Coach, Instagram, again, all Couples Master Coach everywhere. So, yeah, they can find me there, but probably the website's the most direct.
Fantastic. Dee, thank you so much for being on Midlife Unraveled. It's been such a pleasure to have you as a guest again. I feel very, very privileged that we've had you on twice now. It's been wonderful to
I
chat
feel
with you.
privileged to be here, Anita. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Thanks, Dee.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, share and subscribe so you can stay updated with more from Midlife Unraveled. To see more Midlife Unraveled, follow us at midlifeunraveled.com or at Midlife Unraveled on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you soon.